This is political violence designed to suppress lawful political activity and to obstruct the rule of law. And so the president says, I hereby designate Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization.
An attempted assassin came within an inch of ending President Trump's life in Butler, Pennsylvania. And on the campaign trail, another attempted assassin tried to kill the president at his golf club in Florida.
That means that Governor Newsom doesn't think this is important. He just wants to use this to raise money. He wants to use it to go out and try to make himself feel like a big deal. And he's doing it by attacking our law enforcement officers and making their lives more dangerous.
The White House not playing around with Antifa any longer, posting this, saying that Antifa is a militarist, anarchist enterprise that explicitly calls for the overthrow of the United States government, law enforcement authorities, and our system of law. Thanks to the leadership of President Trump, they are now classified as a domestic terrorist organization. But there's been a lot of reaction to this as well. Stephen Miller came out. He says, we will dismantle Antifa. And they've set up shop. Remember, they had the different locations in Portland and Seattle where they set up Chaz and Shop, the autonomous zones, and just took over physical regions of cities. And everybody just kind of stood around like, well, they're just protesting. Let them just run it out, okay? They just have to burn themselves out on it, okay? It's like taking your dog to the dog park or something. That's okay. You know, they'll run around for a couple hours, play insurrection, and then they'll tire themselves out. That didn't really happen. And so the question, of course, is why was this organization and these people who think that they can take over America allowed to fester? Oh, that's right, because they were so busy focusing on the J6ers, the mostly peaceful protesters who were there and invited into the Capitol. So Stephen Miller is excited about it. Caroline Leavitt says, Trump is not backing down, okay, from crushing radical left violence. That's why he just designated Antifa, a network of radical left terrorists that aim to overthrow the government, as a domestic terror organization. And here's more from Kyle Becker. A lot of the left is responding like, Antifa, it's just an idea. It's not even a real thing. All they do is just send memes on the internet, and they're not a real threat or terror organization. Well, Kyle Becker posted some of their training manuals, and they explain explicitly how to form an Antifa group, saying a number of people have asked, how do we form an Antifa group? This is about radical organizing, and this covers a number of advantages for dealing with infiltrators, state repression, and actions that we take as anti-fascists. Start monitoring, start stickering and wheat pasting, start doxing people, saying a diversity of people are joining the anti-fascist movement today. Some of us use Antifa as a way to promote political views, and be wary of people who just want to fight. Drop people who have loose lips or openly talk about illegal actions, and here are your obligations and visibility and all the things. It's an organized group, organized resources. They're trying to recruit to overthrow the U.S. government. And Andy No says once this executive order starts to be unfolded, he hopes they look into some of these organizations who are funding this, saying one of the international groups that actually pays these terrorists in the United States is called the International Antifa Defense Fund. They operate fundraising campaigns on Patreon, Fundraiser, and the Action Net. Where does this money come from? How does it make its way in? Militant Antifa activist and Rutgers assistant professor Mark Bay donates proceeds from his Antifa handbook to the group. So they buy his book and he gives the money back to the terrorists. So that's interesting. Rutgers U assistant professor Mark Bray, maybe he'll be under investigation for funding terrorism in America. The defense fund has donated to the Antifa militants in Texas, and they were charged with attempted murder after they allegedly shot up an ICE facility in Alvarado, hitting an officer in the neck because they like to shoot people in the neck. So here's one, the International Defense Fund, Anti-Fascist Defense Fund. For the last decade, we've been providing emergency support to anti-fascists all over the world. To date, that's meant giving over $250,000 to more than 800 anti-fascists in 26 different countries. Hospital bills, bail money to get people who commit crimes out of jail so they can terrorize again, lost wages funding this terrorism, emergency relocations, competent lawyers, court fines, and a whole lot more. So you can read the funding that is being shoved in to these terrorist organizations, but the president's not going to be taking it anymore. From the White House, we finally have some action. Fact sheet from the president. Today, Trump signed an order to designate Antifa as a domestic terror organization. From the president of the United States, Antifa is now designated a terrorist organization. Writing from the White House on September 22nd in an executive order, they decide Antifa is a militarist, anarchist enterprise that explicitly calls for the overthrow of the U.S. government. They want to overthrow law enforcement authorities and our system of law. It uses illegal means to organize and execute a campaign of violence and terrorism nationwide. This campaign involves coordinated efforts to obstruct enforcement of federal laws. They have armed standoff with law enforcement officials. There are organized riots. There are violent assaults on ICE people and other law enforcement. They dox and issue threats against political figures as well. Now, Antifa recruits, trains, and radicalizes young Americans to engage in this violence. Their attempt is to suppress political activity, and they employ elaborate means and mechanisms to identify what they're working on and to shield their operatives. They conceal their funding sources, and they want to frustrate law enforcement. Individuals associated with and acting on behalf of Antifa coordinate with other organizations to foment and spread political violence all across America, and this is all done to achieve policy objectives. They're trying to win by coercion and intimidation, and that is terrorism. Now, because of the aforementioned pattern of political violence, and more will be fleshed out when we go to the fact sheet, this is political violence designed to suppress lawful political activity and to obstruct the rule of law. And so the president says, I hereby designate Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. All relevant executive departments and agencies shall utilize all applicable authorities, to investigate, disrupt, and dismantle any and all illegal operations, especially those involving terrorist actions conducted by Antifa or those claiming to be on behalf of Antifa, or any person who provides material support, and we want investigations and prosecutorial actions against those who even fund it. And I can't even imagine how much money is coming in from overseas and probably foreign nations officially. This order shall be implemented consistent with applicable law. It doesn't change anything else, and you should publish this in the Federal Register so everybody knows. Signed from the White House by your favorite president, Donald J. Trump. And there's more. Here's the fact sheet that supports this. They say, today, Trump signed the order. It notes that they are militarists and anarchists, and they're inducing terrorism all across the country. Here's what needs to happen. They've engaged in coordinated efforts to obstruct, coerce, and intimidate Americans. That is literally domestic terrorism. Now, they've engaged in armed standoffs, organized riots, violent assaults of ICE officers, routine doxing, and now ICE officers, because of them, are facing a 1,000% increase in assaults against these ICE agents. An Antifa-affiliated group in Portland, Oregon, doxed ICE officers, published their names, pictures, and personal addresses online so that they could be attacked. A journalist was violently assaulted by Antifa protesters while reporting on a protest in Portland. That's Andy No, who was chased down the street and beaten badly. Using pepper spray, baseball bats, and tasers, they violently attacked Trump supporters during a Patriot March in Palm Beach, Pacific Beach, California. Now, Antifa recruits and radicalizes young Americans to engage in this violence and conceals the identities of its members and funding sources, and that frustrates law enforcement. And their efforts advance political violence, and they try to suppress lawful political speech, and so they have to be stopped. Every American, says the president, deserves to be safe. So he said, I am pleased to inform our many USA patriots that I am designating Antifa, a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster, as a major terrorist organization. I will also be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices. Now, Trump has been relentless to combat terrorism, from designating cartels as foreign terrorists, ordering military strikes on narco-terrorists. And Trump has also deployed federal resources to LA, DC, and Memphis to stop these maniacs from terrorizing Americans. Now, Caroline Leavitt was speaking about this yesterday, and here's what she said in advance of this announcement from the White House press
briefing. For too
briefing.
long, past leaders have offered platitudes while political violence has been allowed to fester and harm innocent Americans. There has been coordinated campaigns dating back years, spearheaded by radical left-wing organizations centered on dehumanizing, intimidating, doxing, and even attacking Americans whom they disagree with. These groups have radicalized impressionable individuals to foment violence. An attempted transgender assassin traveled to Justice Brett Kavanaugh's family home with plans to end his life. An attempted assassin came within an inch of ending President Trump's life in Butler, Pennsylvania, and on the campaign trail, another attempted assassin tried to kill the president at his golf club in Florida.
Ryan Root.
A left-wing assassin shot United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson right in the back in the heart of New York City. ICE agents are facing a more than 1,000% increase in assaults for simply doing their jobs. Violent radical left-wing mobs engaged in illegal behavior, targeted Jewish Americans, and shut down America's college campuses under the previous administration. Left-wing mobs burned down Tesla dealerships out of, quote, protest of Elon Musk and his policies.
Firebombing the
In
cars.
May, a left-wing activist shouting "Free Palestine" murdered 2 innocent Israeli embassy staffers outside of the D.C. Jewish Museum here in Washington. These are just a few examples, prominent examples, of the growing left-wing political violence in our country. Enough is enough, and as President Trump has promised, he will directly address the dark sources funding and supporting this domestic terrorism to finally restore order in our country. The American people can expect further, very strong action on this very soon. Everyone, Republican, Democrat, Democrat, everyone in between. We all deserve to live in a country where we do not have to fear for our lives simply for stating what we believe in.
All right, so nice statement from Caroline, and of course they shot Charlie in the neck. And there's no evidence that that dude was Antifa, but kind of Antifa adjacent. There's kind of this Antifa culture that you can just have more dead fascists, as I've heard repeatedly from college students on college campuses who are asked questions in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination. So whether or not you're officially Antifa, it has moved the line forward and created this culture that if you're a trans furry and dating another gay man or whatever, then that can lead to political violence that is perfectly justified. And why wouldn't you think that? I mean, half the Democratic Party believes that Charlie essentially deserved to die. They were okay with it. Well, we don't condone political violence, but he deserved it, which means you condone political violence, you psychopaths. Here is what Homeland Security says, our agents have been under attack from these maniacs. This was just something that they could use to posture and attack our ICE agents, 1,000% increase in assaults, and now even Gavin Newsom is acting on behalf of Antifa and trying to attack the federal government. Here's Kristi Noem explaining.
It's not going to fly, Sean, and you've already mentioned that it's unconstitutional. So this was just something they could use to posture and attack our ICE law enforcement officers over again. And that's what's so irresponsible about it. Governor Newsom waited many, many days to even sign this into law. And like you said, wouldn't even be enforced until January, which means that it's pointless. It's just something that they want to talk.
And you can see the Chiron says it's a mask ban. So Newsom says, if you're here enacting law enforcement and you're an ICE agent, you can't wear a mask. They say, we don't follow your rules. We're the federal government. Get out.
But I was a governor. When I had a bill and a policy that I thought was very important for my people in the state of South Dakota, we put an emergency clause on it. We signed it into law as soon as possible. That means that Governor Newsom doesn't think this is important. He just wants to use this to raise money. He wants to use it to go out and try to make himself feel like a big deal. And he's doing it by attacking our law enforcement officers and making their lives more dangerous. And every time I'm in a room with our law enforcement officers, I'm talking to them before they go out on our streets, I'm just overwhelmed by the fact that all of these young men and women have families, that they all want to go home to their families at night too, and that people like Gavin Newsom are making it much more dangerous for them just to go do their job.
All right, so that's Kristi Noem, and she, of course, is delivering the truth that these people are maniacs and terrorists.